All right, everyone, let's get going, shall we? Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. This is a call-in show that is dedicated to our conference realignment videos that we posted over the last week. So we have our call-in show every Sunday night, as we will in 2 days from now, Sunday night at 10 o'clock Eastern time. So get used to that. Mark it in, lock it down. 10 o'clock Eastern time every Sunday night, where we do our call-in show. So this is a little special edition here, and we may need to extend this because I've got many comments and questions and recommendations and suggestions to get to concerning our conference realignment series, and I will get to those. And this is the sole purpose of this live stream call-in show, is to take your calls on conference realignment. So I'm not going to be talking about anything else. This is strictly on conference realignment. And if you have yet to see the series, check it out after you watch our live stream here. So if you're watching live, of course, come in to the live stream, into the live chat as you always do, and let's talk it up. I'm going to go through the live chat. I'm also going to answer every comment that was posted in response to my conference realignment videos. And I'm going to go through the conference realignment to start. So let's start there. Welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. If this is the first time that you've caught me, or you've seen a video or two, if you love the game, we love college football, this is your place to be for the best in analysis, discussion, and debate of college football. All right. I have looked at the conferences and I have realigned the conferences. So let me say right out of the gate, for the 16 online right now and the many thousands and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and possibly millions that will watch this video eventually, I will state it right out of the top, right out of the gate, that my conference structure and also a scheduling format has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with academics, nothing to do necessarily with money. It has everything to do with football. It has nothing to do with the other sports. I don't care about the other sports. This is a football exercise, and I will answer all your questions and comments that have already been submitted, and we'll go through the live chat as well and take your calls. Who knows how long we're going to be here. All right. So this is strictly football. Everything for the good of football, college football, across the landscape of college football across the country, in regards to the competition on the field, the rivalries, the traditions, geography. So a few people in the comments latched onto one of those objectives and then would say, what about this? I took all those into consideration: the competition on the field, rivalries, tradition, geography, the good of the game across the board. All right, let's start with this. The SEC, pretty easy. There is no Texas A&M or no Missouri. We have shipped them back to the Big 12. The SEC Eastern Division will look like this. Those are all the current teams that currently reside in the SEC East, minus Missouri. No Missouri. You've got your SEC Eastern Division circa 2011 and before. The SEC Western Division, much the same, minus Texas A&M, shipped back to the Big 12. The SEC Western Division with those 6 teams, and that was your SEC West as of 2011 as well. So the SEC is the 12 teams that comprised the league in 2011. Let's go to the Big Ten. The Big Ten East looks like this. Current members: Indiana, Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State. We bring Purdue over from the SEC, from the Big Ten Western Division, and there it is. You will see the additions in caps. Notre Dame. Notre Dame joins the Big Ten. It makes total sense. We will get to your comments and questions. Big Ten Western Division. They're all the teams that we're already familiar with playing in the Big Ten Western Division. Those are the 6 teams that will play in our new conference realignment in the Big Ten West. It's the current Western Division minus Purdue, who moved to the East to join its rival, Indiana. Let's go to the Big 12. The Big 12 North Division welcomes Colorado from the Pac-12. And if you've been watching college football for more than, let's say 6 or 7 years, you're familiar with Colorado and a long-standing tradition of Colorado football in the Big 8. Then the Big 12, same conference. So we had Colorado, and we split the Big 12 into 2 divisions. Colorado joins Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State in the Big 12 North. In the Big 12 South, it's basically a Texas division. We add Houston and Mizzou coming in from the SEC, and Texas A&M from the SEC as well. Baylor, Houston, Missouri, TCU, Texas A&M, Texas Tech. A lot of rivalries there within division play in the Big 12 South. Let's move to the ACC. Here we got some shuffling going on. The ACC is going to lose 4 teams and add 2 for a total of 12. In the ACC Atlantic Division, look at the rivalries. UCF, USF, Florida State, and Miami all playing in the same division. Look at that. Central Florida, South Florida, Florida State, and Miami all playing in the same division. Look at all those Florida rivalries going up against each other each and every year. We also have Georgia Tech and Wake Forest. Moving to the ACC Coastal Division, Clemson moves from the Atlantic to the Coastal. No big deal there. Then look at those North Carolina rivalries with Duke, UNC, North Carolina State, and then Virginia Tech stay in the same division. So the ACC, again, is losing Louisville, Pitt, Syracuse, and Boston College, gaining Central Florida and South Florida for a 12-team ACC. Let's go out to the Pac-12. North Division, the same as it is right now. Cal, Oregon State, Stanford, Washington State, but also Boise State, a team that is easily played up to Power 5 and Pac-12 standards. It's now going on 20 years. Boise State moves to the Pac-12. In the Pac-12 South, we have Arizona State, BYU, look at that, USC and UCLA, and Utah. So the Pac-12 South loses Colorado, gains BYU. BYU, a rival of Utah, can play Utah every year in division play. Arizona State, of course, USC, UCLA, BYU, Utah. Look at that, a perfectly symmetrical division with 2 rivals from each state and areas. There you go. All right. Are we missing anyone? Whoa, I guess we are. We've got a 6th conference added to the Power 5 structure. It is the newly formed Big East. And the Big East North Division is comprised of, this is a beautiful, beautiful Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, Upper Mid-Atlantic Conference. Army, Boston College, Cincinnati, Penn State, Pitt, and Syracuse play in the North. In your South Division, you've got Louisville, Maryland, Navy, Temple, Rutgers, and West Virginia. There's your conference realignment according to MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. All right, let's get to the live chat. Then I will get to the comments and the questions and recommendations that we've received over the past week. If you have yet to check out these videos, please do. We shot a video in which I released the outline, the purpose, the plan of the conference realignment. Then I also unveiled our scheduling format, which deals with both the ills of in-conference and out-of-conference scheduling. So we'll get to that time permitting. But we'll be back on Sunday night, and maybe, who knows, maybe tomorrow as well. So check out the introductory video. Then we've got a video outlining each conference, as we just did there. And here we are. Pineru 5, Piru. Yo! Thanks for the salute. A salute back to you, Piru. big Michigan fan. We love Michigan. We love talking Michigan football here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And we will have a lot to talk about concerning Michigan football in the coming days. So, Pinero 5 Piru, a lot of Michigan stuff coming your way. McD Sports 4, good to see you. The Rod Farba, good to see you again. Clemens' son, I am doing well. How are you, sir? Hope that everything's well in your household. Murder Blaze, good to see you. Got College Football Frenzy on the line. What's good? Phil B, big Florida State fan, and we've got our first call of the night. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Whoa, Navy Thomas. And you know what I did not do is I'm going to have to fix our mic situation. Go right ahead, Navy Thomas. I will do that right now so everyone can hear you. I forgot about our mic situation. All right.
A new one early today.
Yeah, what's on your mind?
I'm just impressed with your ideas of busting up the conferences, which needs to happen. I know this theory of the Big East, and it'll be a different name, but yeah. And when it comes to the Big 12, West Virginia needs to get the hell out of there and go to the ACC, Big East, whatever you want to name it. And I don't know. It just, what if you want to go to 12-team conferences to go to the Power 6? I keep scratching that, and I can't quite figure out Conference 14, Conference 14, Conference 14, and coming up with 6 of those. I don't really see a problem getting there. So I just wanted to go with that and let you roll with it, and you can go through the whole thing. So nice talking to you. I'll talk to you later.
I appreciate it, Tom. Always love hearing from Navy Thomas, one of our originals. No question about that. Big Husker fan, loves the Big Ten, loves college football. And Navy Thomas joins us on a regular basis, and again, he's the best. All right, so yeah, I have outlined, and unfortunately we'll have different people popping in as we go along with this, and they'll not be able to catch up. Therefore, it's imperative that if you catch us midstream, that you wait till the video posts, and then you can watch the entire thing. And I'm going to get to all the comments on the live chat, and then we're going to dive into the comments that have been left over the past week. So I'm going to whip through these just because they're not necessarily... So there's an interesting comment. So I want everyone to know right out of the gate that I recorded these segments back in 2017. So these are 3 years old. I looked at them. I didn't, you know what, truth be known, I didn't look at them, but I knew exactly what I had stated, and I didn't think, okay, I figured at that point, there's really nothing that I would change. There's nothing that's happened in the last 3 years that would change my opinion on the way college football should be structured. And keep in mind, there's a scheduling component to this too. It's not just the conference realignment. Scheduling in college football's screwed up. It has to be taken out of the hands of the universities, the football programs that have their own agendas, and it has to be structured. Just over the past, let's see, it was just yesterday that the NFL released its 2020 schedule. And many of you from being on social media and watching the various sports networks know that the NFL schedule release is like this huge deal. It shouldn't be, because if you understand anything about NFL scheduling, pick your team and we could have a discussion, and within about 90 seconds determine who's going to be on any team's schedule. We know that already. If you're the Pittsburgh Steelers and you play in the AFC North, you play your 3 division rivals home and home. Then you play a designated division in the other conference. So there's another 4 teams you're going to play. And then based on how well you performed last year, there's a formula as to who else you will play in the AFC. So it's not a big deal. I don't know why it's made to be such a big deal, the NFL schedule release. This would be a big deal because we would have a schedule release every offseason. It wouldn't be this Georgia and Notre Dame just signed to play in 2033. Oh, great. I'm really excited about that in 2020. 13 years from now, Georgia and Notre Dame are going to play. Whomever. Why? And then people will say when I roll out this plan, well, we need to have these games scheduled in advance. Why? There's an entire NFL schedule, Major League Baseball schedule of 162 games times 30 teams, NBA schedule, NHL schedule put together during the offseason before the next season. Why does the college football games have to be scheduled years in advance? They don't. And it should be taken out of the school's hands. Are the Pittsburgh Steelers, are the Cleveland Indians, are the Sacramento Kings scheduling their own games? No. All right. Nate's in the house. Clemens' son, Premier Youth Theater. Luke, good to see you, everyone. Sea Dog West, good to see you as well. John Shields, great to see all of the Florida schools in the same conference. I wish the NCAA would adopt such a plan. Okay, so that reminds me, back to Luke's comment. This is a good one right here. So I am not pretending that this is a perfect system. There won't be a perfect system because it's impossible to keep the numbers in line and get the teams all lined up exactly the way you want them. It's basically impossible. And as soon as anybody would bring up, okay, I got an issue with your Big Ten, for example, you really can't criticize the alignment until you do the entire thing. You can't just say you need to fix this and then not look at the rest of it. So Luke is making a great point here that Appalachian State versus UCF or USF, that's a good argument right there. I think it's legit. That's something that certainly would be analyzed. I'm one man. I'm making up a conference realignment. It's not like I spent hours and hours of research figuring things out, but it's a good plan, and it's 12 teams, 6 conferences. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's McD Sports 4. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. I want to talk about this conference realignment thing.
Sure.
So, I think we're heading towards a big realignment, and it's going to be either one of 2 things. It's either going to be what you said, 6 conferences with 12 teams each, or we're going to have 4 conferences with either 16 or 18 teams, depending on how the conferences want to do it. Because I think the Big 12 or the Pac-12, I think they might disable themselves.
So at the time when all this started to blow up, when Nebraska left and went to the Big Ten and Colorado bailed and Missouri and Texas A&M, there was much talk about there being 4 super conferences of 16 teams and that being where we were headed. So what you're saying is certainly not far-fetched.
Well, I think it might be 18 teams of 4 super conferences, because I think you're going to see teams like UCF, schools like UCF, Boise State, and a few other group of 5 schools, and some independents possibly go and try and make a play to get into the Power 5. So that's why I'm saying 18, possibly. So
the problem with the larger sized conferences is obviously we want these teams to play each other within their own conference. If you've got an 18-team conference, my goodness, there are going to be teams in that conference that never see each other.
No divisions.
No divisions.
Yeah.
You're going to open up the conference standings to the SEC, and you're going to see, Missouri finished in 16th place this year.
Yep.
Is there going to be a conference championship game?
Yep.
Okay. All right. How many conference games are we playing?
9.
Playing 9 conference games.
You have one. You have one lock opponent. There's 17 other teams, and you have one lock opponent each year, and then you have 16 other teams, and then you're on a schedule. You play those 8 teams in your conference with every 8 conference games, and then every other year. So you see everybody every other year.
Okay, so if I'm Auburn, I assume my lock game is Alabama.
Correct.
Auburn and Georgia play the South's oldest rivalry. You are
every other
destroying that. Every other year?
Yep.
You've got 18 teams in a conference with a 9-game schedule. Therefore, any particular team is missing playing, what, 8 other teams in the conference?
Every other year.
There are 8 teams that they won't be playing. You're going to have such a disparity. First of all, you're going to have such a disparity of difficulty of schedule. It's going to be all over the place. The more teams you have involved, the more teams there are involved, the more the conference schedules can be different and varied. Therefore, the more likely that the disparity in schedule is going to be way out of whack. The disparity in the difficulty of schedules is going to be all over the place. Do you follow me?
Yeah, but I think they'll be good. I'm sure maybe you put teams into groups, like maybe you put Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, and I don't know, Tennessee in a group, and then maybe you have something like you play those 3 teams every year, and then there's a rotation somehow. Or you do a group of 6 teams, and then there's or a group of 3 teams, and then there's rotations on how you play. Like maybe you throw Alabama, Auburn, and Georgia in a group of 3, and then Alabama and Georgia will play each other. Alabama, Auburn, and Georgia every year, and then there'll be like a rotation or stuff like that.
All right, McD, we don't want to lose anybody out there. Let's not get too far into the weeds with exactly how this is going to look, because we would need some kind of graphic display to support that. So you've got 4 leagues with 18 teams. Do you know exactly who's going to be in which league? If you work that out, or you're just...
I worked that out. So you have the Pac-12, Big Ten, SEC, and ACC. In the Pac-12, you have the 12 teams you have right now, and then you're adding 6 teams, and those 6 teams will be all the Texas schools in the Big 12, which gets you to 16, and then you're going to add Boise State and BYU, which will get you to 18. In the Big 10, you have 14 teams right now. You will have to add 4 more teams. Those 4 teams will be the Kansas schools, Iowa State, and Notre Dame. And then in the SEC, you have 14 teams, and those 4 schools you'll add are, you would take Virginia Tech out of the ACC, you would take West Virginia, and then you would take Oklahoma and Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State's playing in the Oklahoma and Oklahoma State are playing in the ACC?
SEC.
In the SEC. Okay.
Yeah, you're taking Virginia Tech out of the ACC. And then the ACC, you have 13, which means you have to have 5. So you have South Florida, Central Florida, Temple, Navy, and Army.
Okay. Well, I'm not... I certainly would poke holes in the scheduling. The scheduling of it, I hate. I hate the scheduling because of just too many teams in a conference. You just can't keep track of them, and they don't play each other enough. But I think your structure, if you would have to go to 4 conferences with 18 teams in it, it's pretty close to the way I would, but I wouldn't want to go in that direction. But I think you configured it about as well as it could be without looking at it on paper.
I like 12 teams, 6 conferences better, but I feel like we're heading towards that 14 conferences, and they say 16 teams, but I just really think it's going to be 18 because I think, to me, there's value in adding a Boise State or a Central Florida to your conference if we're thinking football. So that's why I think we're going to head to 18 because if you have 16, no team in the group of 5 can move up to the Power 5 if we're doing 16. But if you have 18, you're going to have your Boise States become Power 5s and your Central Floridas. And I do think you're going to see that. So that's why I said 18. But I'm very interested to see how it works. As I said, I will prefer 6 conferences with 12 teams each, but with 9 conference games and a conference championship. But I just don't know if we're going to see that because I feel like you're going to see the SEC and the Big Ten and the ACC try and make a power play, and then I just think the Big 12 might disband because I think the SEC is going to get Oklahoma. So we'll see what happens. But that's all I really have for you, Mark. Thanks for taking my call, and go Terps.
Thanks, McD. Appreciate it. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Let me get the number up here. It's 860-325-3687. Somebody had asked about Minnesota. Minnesota is staying in the Big Ten Western Division. If there was a typo, I apologize. I don't believe there was. Minnesota is staying in the SEC, in the Big Ten Western Division. All right. I'm getting to the questions here that I've received over the past week. So Wayne Bennett is asking, what about the schools who have a 7-game home schedule each year? I don't know what that means. What about them? Okay. All right. Not use Dexter. It's awful. All this freedom. We need someone to dictate what they do. We can't allow schools to make their own decisions. We know more than they do. Let's also allocate the coaches and players to the teams. Let's make things equal and fair. Fair. What a concept. We just need to take control away from the schools and players and give it to the Fuhrer. I guess I'm the Fuhrer. I'm not real fond of that title, but so not use Dexter either being a bit sarcastic, or maybe he's actually stating it the way it is. All right. Polish Gator, how about a segment on cheating in recruiting? Okay, we're not dealing with anything else. Chase Penny, I'm not happy having Texas teams, especially Texas for A&M. Okay, please check your typing and your thought process. Panero 5 Piru. All right, I don't need any national championship game predictions. George, we should just leave the SEC alone and then gather up the hodgepodge group of teams scattered around the country that could even possibly be nearly on that level and put them all in one conference. And there you go. Now you have a legitimate conference to oppose the SEC. So George says, take the SEC, leave it alone, and then take all the teams that could possibly compete with the SEC, throw them in a conference, Ohio State and Clemson and Oklahoma, etc., I guess. And that would be your conference, your other conference. Okay, that must be the extent of the comments, at least to that video. Let's go to our next video involving the SEC. Here we go. Dentine says, this is a cool idea, but some teams would rarely ever get a break. Like South Carolina already has the hardest schedule in the country, and replacing their few cupcake games with 2 Power 5 teams would just be hell. Okay. South Carolina is already playing Clemson and another Power 5 anyway. When has South Carolina not played a second Power 5 team? If they did, it was UCF in recent years. They've been playing this past year North Carolina and Appalachian State. I know it's not a Power 5, but it's as good as many Power 5s. Okay, we'll get to the scheduling at another time. Don't want to confuse all of you. Reasonable Gump. While you're at it, move Arkansas back to the Big 12 as well as and downgrade Vanderbilt to the group of 5 where they should be. Now we have a 10-team conference. So he's going with my suggestion of moving Mizzou and Texas A&M out of the SEC, and then also saying get Arkansas out of here to the Big 12 and downgrade Vandy. And we've got 10 teams in the SEC. And everybody plays everyone. They play 9-game schedule. This is the way it actually should be, because there's really no way to have a true conference champion with a fair scheduling system without having everybody play everyone. That is the best way to do it. The Big 12 has it right now, not because of their intelligence or that they intended it that way, just schools left, and they were left with 10 teams, therefore 9 games and a 9-game conference season. So they actually play. I applaud the Big 12. I don't applaud them because, again, they didn't have anything to do with it. But they fell into a place where they actually have the truest conference standings because everyone plays everyone. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Reasonable Gump. How are you?
Hey, I just read your comment.
My comment on a previous video?
I did. I can't believe you didn't hear it. I just read it as of 30 seconds ago when you said, in addition to Mizzou and Texas A&M kicking them out of the SEC to the Big 12, kick out Arkansas and Vandy. Just read that comment.
Well, yeah, because it would make it to where everybody can play everybody
Exactly.
in the conference.
I totally agree. That's the way it should be.
Well, I just noticed you did not do that in your conference realignment, so I thought I'd correct you a little bit. Maybe you forgot.
Well, I didn't forget. I just thought, my goodness, I don't know that we could go with, do we go with 8? Maybe I'll look at this again. Maybe we go with 8 10-team conferences.
I mean, that sounds just fine to me. I mean, obviously none of this is ever going to happen, so I just figure if you're going to do a conference realignment, you might as well try and make it as perfect as you want it, right? And in a perfect world, there aren't teams that luck out one year because they don't have to play Alabama or Georgia or LSU for a cross-divisional, but then you have another team like South Carolina that happened to play all 3 of those last year. I believe they may not have played. No, it was Texas A&M who had to play all 3 of those.
Yes,
but and right now this would be fixed in the 12 team conference. But at least right now in the 14 team, this is the most. This is kind of the most insulting thing, or the most ridiculous part to me, is that there will be all freshmen who come in right now this year will never play the rotational team that their team played last year. So, for example, I can't even remember which team. Let's say I completely forgot which team Alabama played. South Carolina last year. They rotated South Carolina. All freshmen coming in this year, they will never play South Carolina, not once, because it takes 6 years to rotate back.
Mm-hmm.
That's just. Isn't it just ridiculous?
Yeah,
there will be
it is.
Players who play, even if they're redshirted and they stay on for 5 years, they will still never play at least one team out of the entire conference.
Well, one of our
that's just dumb.
One of our previous callers is proposing 18 team conferences. You talk about a circus to try to keep track of 18 teams. We now have 18 teams in the SEC. Let's follow that conference.
don't mean 8-team conferences. You mean the number 1-8. 8 teams in a conference.
Yes, 2 less than 20.
I don't even. You wouldn't even be. You literally wouldn't be able to play everyone in your own division at that point.
You would. Yeah, he didn't want divisions.
Assuming there would be divisions.
Yeah.
There would have to be 3 divisions in a conference, 3 divisions of 6.
I am all for playing everybody in the. I don't think a lot of people are bothered by that, though. I think we're in the minority, Reasonable Gump. I just don't come across a lot of people that are bothered. And even if I point out the disparities, like I'll do it every year. I'll look at, the SEC or the ACC. They're the 2 best examples because there's the most variation because they're only 8-game schedules and they're 14-team leagues. And I'll take the team that's got the toughest division or conference schedule based on last year's results. And then I'll take the team that's got the worst. And I'll just point out that, you play everyone in your division. Okay, that's even, that's fair. But then you play 2 other opponents. And there have been times, and the most egregious example of this I can remember was one year, and this was about 7 or 8 years ago when Alabama and LSU, just a year or 2 removed from them playing in the national championship game, where Alabama played Tennessee and Kentucky as their 2 non-division games, and both of those teams went 1-7 in the SEC the year before. And LSU plays, of course, Florida every year. Then they also had Georgia. Those 2 teams went 7-1. So you've got 2 teams directly competing, and it doesn't matter which 2 teams it is. It can be Vanderbilt, and you need to just be fair. But let's be reasonable. Those are with the 2 best teams in the division and in the conference at the time. And one of them, they play the exact same schedule, except for 2 games out of 8. One of them is playing 2 teams that went 14-2 last year. The other one's playing 2 teams that went 2-14 the year before. Is that really fair? It's ridiculous.
No, yeah, I mean it is. And in fact, for the longest time, a lot of people kind of rag, among 1,000 other things, just another data point to trash Alabama is that we get quote unquote lucky with our cross-divisional opponent being Tennessee. And it's just like, if you look back more than this millennium, having Tennessee on your schedule every single year was not a gimme. Just because it's not really Alabama's fault that Tennessee is just nosedive off a cliff, although that seems to be changing a little bit from the looks of recruiting. Yeah. But yeah, man, it bothers me a lot, and I don't see anything changing. Mainly because the SEC, the ACC has no excuse, but the SEC at least is burdened by success because the argument is always going to be, well, it doesn't matter if we only play 8 teams. Look at the teams we play. The SEC still has all the tough teams, and they still have the toughest schedules. Even with 8 teams, so they're going to resist any kind of change to go to a 9-team schedule because they think their schedule's hard enough with 8.
Listen to this conference proposal we've got in the live chat. This is your SEC here, Reasonable Gump. Listen to this. Clemson, South Carolina, Georgia, Georgia Tech, Alabama, Auburn, Florida State, Florida, Duke, and North Carolina.
Duke and North Carolina? Where did that come from?
You got Duke, North Carolina. You got Florida State. You got Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech did used to be a member of the SEC a long time ago, so that one I can almost understand. Almost. But I don't know where Duke and North Carolina came from. Anyway, I just saw saw you're on. I haven't talked to you in a while. I actually tried to call I think it was yesterday to get in on the lucrative Michigan Jim Harbaugh bashing conversation you were having, but I ran out of time.
Yeah, we did, unfortunately. That was supposed to be our Miami live stream, so that was scheduled for an hour. So once we got fired up about Jim Harbaugh, somebody did. Unfortunately, that had to be cut short because I certainly had a list of points that I wanted to go through.
Yeah, I noticed. Hey, I did get one thing I wanted to ask you about was about an offhand kind of question that you answered, like in one of your streams about 2 weeks ago, and I'm not sure if you've ever even given this a thought, of these are just kind of off the top of your head. But do you really, out of the SEC, do you really only consider Alabama being the only blue blood school
man,
in the
here
entire?
we go.
Yeah, here we go.
Here we go.
You know, Mark, I gotta say, man, because you are making me. You see, this is unforgivable. What you're doing right now, you are making me commit the ultimate sin.
Yeah.
Which is defending Tennessee. Okay, a team with in the top 10 total of all-time wins. They are number 10. I think they're tied for it, but they're number 10.
Let's not play another football season because that might change.
Yeah, it might. You're right, but withstanding right now, May 2020, they are in the top 10 of all-time wins, and they have 6 national titles. I'm trying to figure out how they don't get that status, but you want to put Penn State in there instead. You got to help me, Mark.
Okay,
you got to help me.
I want to clarify 2 things. Number one would be, are the terms blue blood and elite interchangeable to you?
No, I liked your definition of you were born into it, meaning this is old stuff. This happened. This didn't just happen recently.
All right, and then we're on the same ground there. And then when anybody asks me about elite, I kind of differentiate that into 3 different categories, meaning, is someone elite all time, meaning their current success could be marginal, but they're so well established that it's going to have to continue down a bad road for them to be taken out of all-time elite status. Notre Dame, let's say. And then there are schools in which I think are elite right now. Clemson's elite right now. And then there's a third category of schools that have been elite in pockets of time. Miami has been elite, but I do not consider them all-time elite or elite currently.
Right.
Okay.
I agree.
All right. So we're going back to the blue blood. And this is more of a, since the beginnings of time, particular schools have established themselves as the pillars of college football, and this will almost never change because it's blue blood. You were born into it. Tennessee, 10th in all-time wins, 6 national championships, although I would really have to go through the national championships because you know how I feel about awarding national championships.
Yeah, I know.
I'm clear on one of them, of course, 1998. But when was the one before that? They won a couple in the 50s.
Well, that would actually help out my argument because
it would,
that means their success goes way back.
Sure, it would help your argument, other than the national championships possibly being in question, but it does. And then I got to think that
if you're going to do the.
Yep.
I mean, the thing is, if you want to take that route and be like, well, I don't know, we got to look at these national titles. The thing of it is, every school is going to be hit by that if they won national titles before 1992. Every school. So I'm sure Ohio State has a couple funky ones around in there. Everyone knows about, like 1934 for Alabama, and then 1 or 2 more where they lost the bowl game after they were awarded it. So that's why I say, even though probably 1 or 2 of those 6 national titles are probably, kind of iffy, they're still going to at least have more than your average school, because every school would be hit by that if they were won before 1992.
Well, we would want them to have well above the average school. Average is not our standard here for a blue blood.
But Penn State only having 2, I would say that's average.
Okay, well, again, when a team has undefeated seasons, that don't include national championships, I think that's a problem. So I have no issue. Hey, if somebody wants to pay me to do the job, I'll carve through each season and do it very logically, reasonably, and make some kind of determination that this was a true national championship, or we need to strip that national championship, or we can give it to these 3 other teams as well, because there's no way to differentiate these 4 seasons or these 4 teams. But there are some awful national championships out there, and there are some teams that. What about Auburn as recent as 2004?
2004. Yeah, I was about to say that.
How does a team? Can you imagine this? And this is an ancient history. This is 16 years ago. Can you imagine an SEC champion at 13-0 not being given a chance to win a national championship? That's crazy.
You know, most people, from what I mentioned that about, will say that, well, the SEC wasn't quite what it was 5 years later, so that's why Auburn didn't get the nod. And there were 2 other undefeated teams at the same time, so they were just really unlucky about that.
Well, they were unlucky. Yeah, they were unlucky, and it wasn't fair. And my response to the people that said that the SEC wasn't very good, it was very good. It was very good. Florida was good. LSU was really good. Anyway,
LSU had just won, actually, the year before,
they just won
right?
the year before. Exactly. So what happened that year, and this is one of the issues that we had in the past, is Auburn was lightly regarded in the preseason. They were 17th in the preseason poll that year. USC and Oklahoma were 1 and 2. They never lost. So Auburn just hit a ceiling. They just rose through the rankings and they hit a ceiling. Nobody cared to evaluate how well the teams played. It was just that they hit a ceiling. The other 2 held down those 2 spots, so we can't move them. So they're going to go play this awful national championship game, 55-19. Do we really think Auburn's losing that game by 36 points?
There are some people, I'm not one of them, but there are some people who thought that USC would have beaten anyone like that.
No, not Auburn. No. No.
Yeah, I agree with you. Although I do slightly, I think that I do slightly differ in your way of thinking in this, and that I still think that once you've actually had a championship game, to me, there are no more split titles after that. I mean, that's why there's a championship game. I do not award the Pete Carroll era of USC more than 1. They claimed 1 the year before when LSU won the game.
Yeah.
And I think that's ridiculous. Just like Auburn did not claim 1, I don't think, in 2004. Well, I know the university does not claim 1. I think their coach may have given them rings anyway, but that's beside the point. Even though I think it was kind of ridiculous that, well, I mean, I don't know. What are you going to do? You had 3 undefeated teams, all of whom were supposed to be really good. One of them's got to get left out.
You have a playoff.
Yeah, well, it took 10 years for that to happen, but we got it now. Not really a playoff, more of a popularity contest.
Yeah, it's an invitational.
Anyway, I just think that, and again, I really hate the fact that you're making me defend Tennessee on live YouTube right now, man. But 6 national titles, even if 1 or 2 of them are flunky, top 10 wins, that's got to be blue blood right there. I mean, I also, by the way, I'm not just doing it for the SEC. I don't think you lose to Nebraska, and I for sure think they are. Well, they have a truckload of titles. I think they got 3 in a row one time.
3 out of 4 years.
Do that.
3 out of 4 years in the 90s. 94, 5, and 7. Yes. So my comment, to be completely accurate, was I listed off the Blue Bloods: Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, USC. That was my list. And then I said, I am on the fence my next two in would be Nebraska and Penn State. That was my verbatim comment.
Okay, I actually thought you had Penn State already in, so that's my mistake.
So I was wavering on those two, and I got to say, I didn't even consider. I don't think Tennessee even came to mind.
It's kind of hard with how they've been since basically 2007.
Yeah, it's been ugly, but it's getting better. They're getting some football players.
We'll see. We'll see if it's enough.
All right.
Anyway, man, thanks for talking with me.
Absolutely. Good to hear
get
from
the
you.
other people now.
All right. Talk to you later. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We released a conference realignment series this past week. It started off with our intro video talking about conference realignment, our goals. It has everything to do with football, nothing to do with anything else. We don't care about any other sports. I could care less about your lacrosse program, about your women's softball team. I don't care. Don't care about anything but football. And then I look at tradition, rivalries, geography, and did my best with 12 team conferences. Reasonable Gump makes a very good claim about what I think is great about the Big 12 is that it's a true championship. Even before they added the championship game, everybody played everyone. So if you were 8-1 in the Big 12 and the second place team finished 7-2, well, you play the exact same schedule. So your 8-1 was a better performance, results on the field, than their 7-2 against the exact opponents. Now they run into the slight issue of everybody has to play 5 at home and 4 on the road, or 4 at home and 5 on the road, unless you are Texas and Oklahoma and you play one game at the neutral site against each other. Therefore, they play 4 and 4. That's the only issue with the 9-game schedule is you've got to play one more at home or one more on the road for each team. But otherwise, the Big 12's got it down right. And again, it's not to their credit. They fell into it. Or it was dictated to them about all the schools that left. Beast Mode, I got to say that Notre Dame scheduling as difficult as they do. I had never been bothered with them not playing a conference championship game until 2018, when their schedule in that season turned out to be not so difficult. Not their fault. They scheduled tough. The 5 games in the ACC, including Florida State, Virginia Tech, the traditional games against USC and Stanford. They played Michigan that year. It looked on paper to be a difficult schedule, but it turned out to be Florida State down, Virginia Tech down. Michigan was good, but other than that, USC down, Stanford down. Wasn't that good of a schedule. So this started to bother me on championship weekend when Notre Dame was in the clubhouse at 12-0. And the last spot was going to go to either Ohio State or Oklahoma. Ohio State had the one bad loss. Oklahoma had the opportunity and the benefit of being able to avenge its loss by playing Texas in the Big 12 championship game. And I'm sitting there thinking these teams are back out there on the field, risking their seasons on the line against a quality opponent, Texas, Northwestern, and Notre Dame sitting at home. That did not sit well with me because I thought the case for and against Ohio State and Oklahoma was razor close. I certainly made the case for Ohio State, but I have no issue with Oklahoma. Having made the college football playoff in 2018, I think it was just as well deserved had Ohio State made it. I thought they both had resumes that were similar. Ohio State had the awful loss that Oklahoma did not. but Ohio State played in a more difficult conference and had better wins. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's George. How you doing?
George. You know what, George? I got good news for you.
Good.
I'm $2 richer.
Yes. No,
Thanks
actually,
to you.
you're about 80 cents richer after YouTube gets done with you.
Well, we'll be fair. It's more like $1.20.
Yeah, but then the IRS, they got to get their 30%.
Sure. That's right. You're making a good point. How you
There
doing?
you go. Good. That's why I only do $2 at a time. It's just the principle. I'm not giving YouTube more than $1.20 at a time.
I'll take it. I appreciate it, George. Thinking of me.
It's good to have sense of humor.
Oh, it's needed in life. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. I feel so sorry for Miami and Texas and all those teams, man. There's so many of them. FSU, I could spend an hour on that. Go Google FSU's record lately. It's like
It's right up here. I don't need to, George.
They went 4-4 in the ACC weak division last year.
They went 4-4.
South Carolina beat
Yes, they
Georgia.
did. Yeah. Yes.
Anyway, your last phone call ended, and I didn't want you to stop the show, so I called for absolutely no reason. What do you want to talk about?
Well, we're talking about conference realignment.
Yeah, I already made my point on that. Stop already. We don't need nobody else. We are the Southeastern Conference. You can go rearrange whatever you want. We're fine. And at the end of the day, there's still going to be like 5 or 6 teams that might make it to the playoffs. That's the way it's going to be.
Yeah, so you like the concept of the SEC, we're good to go, leave us alone, and then take the better teams from around the nation and try to make some kind of conference that can compete with the SEC, is how I understand it.
Listen, if that makes you happy, yeah. But Clemson's going, I like it the way it is. You know, what's the motivation for anybody to put a bunch of hard games on our schedule when you can play nobody all year and be Clemson? Let's all be Clemson. Everybody go join the Midwest Conference or something.
Well, that's the way it works out for them right now.
I mean, at least in the SEC, you know, it's like half fucking, even Vanderbilt is not like to be taken for granted. Missouri has proven, you know, by beating Florida's ass 3 years in a row like Georgia did or something, right? Like, they're legit.
Sure.
I'm proud of them.
Well,
I love our conference.
You guys have to deal with LSU every year. And Georgia.
I know. And just to prove a point, South Carolina beat Georgia. Just throw that one in there.
There are no bad teams in the SEC.
Yeah, Georgia don't need to worry about Alabama and Florida. South Carolina will take their ass out. And it's just, I still can't stop laughing. I just hear and I laugh and laugh.
I'm reading your comment, George.
God.
I am reading your comment. There are no bad teams in the SEC. Let me introduce you, George, to Arkansas.
It's like you said, the ACC's just having a down year this year. Like, don't single Arkansas out. Arkansas a few years ago beat us so bad we still have bruises. So it's all in any given year.
Well, I don't know.
You know who the offensive coordinator was for Arkansas when they beat our ass? It was just ridiculous.
Dan Enos.
It was Dan. Yeah.
Sure.
Unbelievable. They ran over us so bad, it's like we couldn't tackle. It was just score.
All right, George, we got some other calls coming in. Oh, no. Actually, this is, that's a private call. Personal call coming in, which we can't take right now. Okay. I looked down at the phone. I was ready to take
your girlfriend, don't call me when I'm on live.
Well,
gosh darn it.
You don't know how right you are, George.
Exactly. What else could it possibly be?
Well, it could be Mom. Could be one of my kids. I had a nice little FaceTime phone call with both my kids right before we started.
Hey, my kid bought a car the other day from a car lot, and when he got the title back from DMV, it said it was a total reconstruct. It had been totaled. And my kid called the guy and said, give me $742 because the car had cost $500. It's a 97 Honda Accord.
And he said, I'll call it even. And the guy said, no, it's 8 months later. Yesterday, the insurance company for that car lot gave my kid $1,300 and told him keep the car. Isn't that great? Because you can't do that to people. You can't sell them a car with a junk title and tell them it's a good car. Do you know that's against the law?
I would think that it would be against the law. I think we're losing viewership here, George. Thanks for calling.
All right, I'm just so happy for my kid. He actually won a stupid case against a car lot, you know.
Tremendous. All right, George. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Love you. Bye.
Have a great night. That's our man, George. All right, back to our conference realignment. Again, we've got 6 conferences. We've got 12 teams in each conference. We did the best we could. Football's all that counts. Don't care about anything else. Just football, geography, tradition, rivalries, football competition on the field. Yes, Snake Spencer, there are bad teams in the SEC. That's what I was trying to point out to George. A school called Arkansas. And again, it's just not, he said it's random. Well, it's not random. Arkansas is bad. LSU's good. Alabama's good. Georgia's good. Vanderbilt's bad. In 3 years from now, we're going to be saying LSU's good. Georgia's good. Alabama's good. Vanderbilt's bad. Arkansas is probably still going to be bad. All right, so I'm going to go back to the comments that I've got here that are tough to weed through because people get into fights with each other. Keith Steck is saying that within the conference TV networks and money available right now, the conference changes you propose will never happen. The 9-game conference schedule and ideas to balance the scheduling overall is a good idea. Thank you there, Keith. I am not looking for anyone's approval in regards to whether it's feasible or reasonable. It's definitely feasible. Will it happen? No. George, I have a better idea. Put everything back the way it was in 1979. Nobody cares who the national champion is. We can argue about it all day long. It's all about winning your bowl game. Well, somebody else commented like that recently too. All right, let's get back to our next string of comments, which came in that I've got to find on the next video. So those were the comments to the SEC. I thought I had some comments here. I know that I've got some comments here where some people really railed on me, and I wanted to address those. All right. Comments made to the Big Ten video. All right. I knew a lot of people would not like my choice of exiting Penn State from the Big Ten. John Getz, no Penn State. They make the Big Ten so much tougher. Dump Nebraska, 27 years in the Big Ten. Been following college football for decades. No explanation for no Penn State. Okay. All right. It's all about perspective based on how old you are and how long you've been watching college football, John. Understand that. So you've been watching college football for 27 years, the length of time that Penn State has been in the Big Ten. For years and years and years, it seemed like, well, Penn State doesn't belong in the Big Ten. When Penn State joined the Big Ten, why is Penn State joining the Big Ten? They're an Eastern school. They play Pitt in West Virginia and Maryland every year, and Syracuse, Boston College. Those are the teams they should be playing. I'm just telling you what people were talking about in the early 90s. So this whole Penn State belongs in the Big Ten. Really? Yeah, they're a good team to be playing in the Big Ten. They're a good foil for Ohio State. But for the good of college football, we need to usher Penn State out of the Big Ten. Daniel, I'm a huge Ohio State fan, therefore a Big Ten guy. Notre Dame to the Big Ten would be awesome. Been wishing for it for a long time. Would raise the perception of the conference a lot, in my opinion. Thank you, Daniel. OBG Garner. My idea, remove Northwestern from the Big Ten. Send Nebraska back to the Big 12 to make the Big Ten actually 10 teams. Okay, you do understand that that would only bring us down to 12 OBG. You still have 2 teams to go. There are 14 teams in the Big Ten, not 12. Christopher Webb, send Nebraska back to the Big 12 and put Iowa State in the Big 10. Don't know what that really accomplishes. We can still play the Iowa State game each and every year. So one misnomer here, I got some criticism that I was tearing up rivalries, like the ACC, SEC rivalries between Georgia, Georgia Tech, Florida, Florida State, Clemson, South Carolina, Louisville, Kentucky. I am not. I explained that in the scheduling portion of the video. Not touching rivalries. If anything, I'm bringing rivalries back together, such as Penn State and Pitt. That's a rivalry. West Virginia, Penn State, West Virginia, Pitt, bringing those rivalries back into play. Boston College, Syracuse, and that Eastern corridor. Texas, Texas A&M, back as a rivalry. Missouri and the rest of the Big 12. Missouri has no rivals in the SEC. Texas A&M really has no rivals in the SEC. Nickma71. The Indiana Hoosiers hate your idea. Just because they can knock off the SEC East champs doesn't mean they can go through this schedule. Indiana is still proud, apparently, of beating Mizzou in 2014. A lot of people would dump Nebraska, keep Penn State, but they're not looking at the entirety of the country. Johnny Bays, any scenario where Michigan makes money off Notre Dame is a no-go. I don't think Notre Dame should ever schedule them. Only way I would want Notre Dame in the Big Ten is if every Big Ten team boycotted Michigan, threw them out of the conference. Yeah. Wayne Bennett, why are you posting this now but talking about 2017 and 18? So I gave some examples from the 2017-18 season because that's when I originally posted the videos. Everything still applies. Michael Tabor. The East is way better, always has been. Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan, by far the biggest of all the blue blood programs. You would have to put someone on the West to make it fair. In the past, that would have been Michigan State, but they're down now. I do understand that the Big Ten Eastern Division is better than the West, and in my plan, it would continue to be. Barrett, 1970, Notre Dame knows who they are, and they will never join the Big Ten. They make their own TV money. They don't need to share, and they will never win the championships with Ohio State and Penn State here. Okay. And I could see Notre Dame going to the Western Division. That's a good thought there. We could go with Notre Dame. So I stated this off the top, so please don't believe that I think that my plan is the only plan, is the best plan, and there's nothing wrong with it. It was brought up by Luke that we could move in Appalachian State to the ACC and not South Florida. Again, understand that my original plan was in 2017. South Florida was coming off a nice little run under Willie Taggart. Beat South Carolina in a bowl game. So understand that. Appalachian State might be a better, we'd have to really review it. Notre Dame in the Big Ten West might be a better way to go. Dennis White, all this stuff doesn't matter because Notre Dame will never join a conference. Steve, close, but I would also drop Rutgers in Maryland, but I would keep Penn State, okay? I would then send Nebraska back to the Big 12 and Notre Dame and put them in the West to replace aforementioned Nebraska. If you want to keep Notre Dame in the East, then put Indiana in the West. But the problem with that is that you're not thinking about the rest of the nation, and we would have a very weak situation in the Big East, another conference. All right. Stephen Morey, don't like it at all. Penn State has to stay at this point. They're the only relevant competition for Ohio State, and Notre Dame will struggle recruiting from within the Big Ten. How about Penn State and Ohio State in the East and Michigan and Notre Dame in the West? I could live with that. Okay? Iron Cross, Big Ten sounds good. Notre Dame will never go for it. Or, sorry, Iron Cross, Notre nothing will never go for it. And we get the salute, as we typically do, from Pinero 5 Piru. All right. I said I would answer every question. Woo! All right. We've got our new Big 12. Not surprisingly, the least amount of people watched the Big 12 video. And it probably had the most changes. McD Sports 4 has Houston staying in the American Conference. Kenneth Nichols, now you talking football. Not use Dexter. 13 teams in the Big 12. If you can't pick only 12 teams in each conference, then just let all the conferences alone. Why? Why? So we do understand that 13 teams in a conference can play a 9-game schedule. That's been determined. Not use Dexter. The playoffs are screwed up. We don't need a playoff, and at most 3 teams ever deserve a chance. Don't ruin the regular season by expanding the playoffs. The best comment of the day comes from Adam the Sports Guy. Like, share, comment, and support the voice of college football. Mark Rogers. Adam the Sports Guy with the comment of the day. And the only thing he forgot was subscribe. We do live streams all the time. And most of them can't be scheduled ahead of time because my guest schedule's changing all the time. Therefore, if you subscribe, you turn on the bell, you get the notifications, and you're all set. Let's see here. Let's go to our next response. I thought I was going to be here all night, and it looks as though there's light at the end of the tunnel, that we don't have to make this some excruciating process. I've been on the line for an hour and 14 minutes. Zornell is telling us that Boise State will never be accepted by the Pac-12. I don't know what that means. I don't know what the backing is on that. Dengby, not so sure about the rivalry thing and how that will pan out. Keep Miami in the Coastal, move USF there as well. Bring 2 of the Coastals to the Atlantic. Let Miami play Clemson annually. Florida State can be separated from Clemson and play them annually or biannually. Okay. John Burkett, congrats. If that would go in effect, you just wanted to water down the ACC more than it already is. So I have excluded all these heavyweights in the ACC like Louisville, Pitt, Boston College, and Syracuse. That's what I've taken out of the ACC, and I added UCF. I don't know that we watered down the ACC. I think we took a lot of middling schools out of the ACC. Not use Dexter. It's much more fair as it is. The SEC playing 8 conference games is the equivalent of other conferences playing 9. You're actually making it less fair by making the SEC play 9 conference games. No. The conference games are meant to determine a conference champion. It's not like, it's not like the NFL, where overall record determines if you win the division and go to the playoffs. Therefore, if you play in this excruciatingly difficult conference in the NFL, if that was the same in college football, then your point is well taken. But we don't determine conference champions by nor their standing against the rest of the rest of the nation based on their total record. I'm not understanding that at all. Not getting that at all. Not use Dex or geographic sense would be Florida State, Miami, and Florida in the same conference. Geographic sense would be South Carolina and Clemson in the same conference. Okay, that's only one factor. Only one factor. I said football competition, geography, tradition, and rivalries. Dirty Knoll, this makes too much sense for the ACC to do it. Cam Lifestyles is on board. Cam, I have never seen your handle before, but welcome to the Voice of College Football. We appreciate you and certainly would love to know how long you've been watching and who you root for. Cam Lifestyle says, for all the purists who don't like change, this will be welcomed by the masses once it's introduced, but it would be great for college football. Make the Pac-12 come south, make the SEC play in the Midwest and out west. Have the ACC schools come to Texas or the desert. Okay. Desmond Solomon, nailed it. Thank you, Desmond. I've never seen your handle before either. So, welcome to the Voice of College Football. We appreciate you joining. Hopefully, you've subscribed. Need everybody out there to please subscribe. Now let's go to the final video comments, which would be the Big East. Yes, the Big East. Here we go. My second favorite comment, or maybe my favorite comment of the day, would come from Dirty Knoll. Mark for NCAA Commissioner, please. Jason Arnold, Memphis, a good candidate. Let's consider, though, that Memphis has only been good for a couple years. Memphis has had some serious dry spells in football. Memphis would be good for South Division to make Conference 12 teams. Good thought, Jason. Thank you so much for that. That's reasonable. Line Mountain is saying it's a shame we never had a real Big East conference for all sports. Kyle Orndorff, why geographically it doesn't fit for Notre Dame to be there? It does make sense competitively in that Notre Dame has a Northeast culture that would allow them and Penn State to fight it out until the other programs rise up. So Notre Dame to the Big East. I can see that as well. Cameron Kurtz, in response to our Big East video. So Penn State just wins every year? Caleb Hudson is saying by far the inferior conference. Basically sums up this whole attempt. Any research at the Big East win record or bowl record would show something different. Okay, and he dives into public institutions and academics, which I don't care about, but I get the point, Caleb. There are going to be weaker conferences than other conferences. They're not going to be competitively perfect. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, it's Hawkins. How you doing, buddy?
Good. What's going on, man?
No, not a whole lot. The last time we had this conversation, I told you how I thought Florida should, something radical. Florida should bolt and go to the ACC, and I felt like I gave you some really good reasons why I thought they should, why it would be in the interest of the school itself. And speaking of what would be in the interest of some of these schools, this whole expansion mess was just started because they were money grabbing.
Oh, yeah.
But schools like Arkansas had really almost, other than the early years when they were in the SEC, their football program has deteriorated, and they're always going to be kind of mediocre at best most years. They had to have a really good coach when they had Bobby Petrino. Arkansas is going to have a really good guy. It's really true for just about any program, but we know it's just easier to win at some places than other places. And, you need a good football coach at Arkansas to win, especially, they just don't have the resources to really compete. And when they were in the Big 12, it was just a lot. The Big 12, one of the old Southwest Conference.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they could get a lot of Texas kids to come play for them. And you know, Arkansas had quite the football tradition, but now they're almost like an afterthought.
Yeah. So, do you think they should move?
Hell yeah, I think they should move. Don't
Okay.
you, Mark? I think it would benefit their program. Winning is better than being in a mediocre league. I'd much rather be. I mean, as fans, I want my team to have better chances to win.
Well, are we thinking about, are we doing this for the purpose of Arkansas or for the purpose of college football? Because somebody's got to lose the games. Regardless of how good these leagues are, somebody's got to lose games. So somebody's going to be bad. There are going to be bad teams, relatively speaking.
Every program that's out there in Division I, they all make money. Most of them make money. You know, the football programs fund all the other sports. So you have to ask yourself a question: is it strictly going to be about nothing but the money? But when you throw a football team out there on the field, fans want to see their teams be competitive. And Arkansas has definitely leveled off the competitiveness of a once great proud tradition. They no longer have anymore. And look at what all this expansion has done to rivalries too. I mean, it's killed the Texas A&M and Texas rivalry. That was one of the greatest rivalries. That was probably a top 5 college football rivalry that was destroyed because of that. You have, the Missouri-Kansas rivalry, which for basketball was really great, but just even for football, they both suck. But I mean, it's still a good, it's a great rivalry. You had Colorado, Nebraska had developed over the last 20 years to be a good football rivalry. I mean, Nebraska, they need to get out of the Big 10, go back to the Big 12. Missouri, they need to go back to the Big 12. Some of these schools need to rethink. Because, Missouri, when they had Gary Pinkel, they had a good football coach, and he did okay in the SEC for a couple of years. But now Missouri's going to be crap for the next, however how long. And Gary Pinkel really did a great job in Missouri when he was in the Big 12.
Yep.
I just think a lot of these programs have relevated their capacity for being much more better and being better. To where now they're just going to be lost in the shuffle. They just can't compete with, a lot of it's about the swimming pool that you're in. And I think with more swimming pools, I think it makes college football more interesting back when there was a Southwest Conference, back when there was a Big East Conference. I think expansion to me has made college football, not as good. And I think expanding the playoffs to more than 4 teams when just about every single year, this year the exception to the rule, there's been 2 exceptions to the rule with these 4 teams in the playoff, for the semifinal games. The Oklahoma-Georgia game and last year the Ohio State and Clemson. Both of those games, the semifinals, were excellent. But most of the games that you're getting are more like the LSU Oklahoma, the Alabama Oklahoma,
sure.
The Alabama Michigan State, the Oregon shellacking of Florida State. These are, the 4th team is usually not even at this point, they're not even competitive usually with the top 3 teams. So why do we need 8? We need more garbage blowout games. I don't see why. It's just college football is getting, it's the greatest sport in the world, and the powers that be that are running the sport, they're hell-bent on destroying what is the greatest sport in the whole world, in my opinion. They're going to kill the golden cow eventually. They're going to try to sap this for everything that they can get out of it, and they're going to end up destroying what was, the greatest sport because of rivalries. And I don't know. What's your take on it, Mark?
Well, I got a lot of takes here. So first of all, again, I still, when we talk about bad football teams. When we say they're bad and they're bad and they're bad, let's all understand that it's all relative. Everybody's got talent. It's just relative. And because it's athletic competition, somebody has to lose the game. So regardless of what teams we kick to what conferences or move around, there are going to be, by definition, bad teams with bad records because everybody wins the game and loses the game. So there's always going to be bad teams. We're not going to get rid of bad teams. They're always going to exist. Not everybody's going to go, or everyone goes 6-6. All right, so that's my first point. My next point is, so Arkansas has succeeded in the SEC.
It's been a minute, though. It's been a while.
Well, it's been about, let's see, about 2012.
13 years.
Well, it's been, 2010, 11, in that range that they were really good. And then Brett Bielema had a couple of decent seasons, 8-4, 7-5. Depends what you mean by good.
Petrino was good. Petrino was good.
Oh, yeah, he had a team finish in the top 5 in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Again, there are going to be bad teams, so somebody's got to lose the games.
Do you know who the coach was of Arkansas when they expanded and came in the league? And it was early. I think it was 95. I know it was 95 because I was at the game. I was watching Florida play Arkansas. Do you remember who the head coach
in the
of
SEC
Arkansas
championship
was?
game? Danny Ford.
That's correct. That's correct. Danny Ford. Yeah, that was that was interesting. But yeah, I think they were there in 2006. They played Florida again with Darren McFadden.
Yeah, they were there in
Felix
2002.
And that was Houston Nutt that was there, and they played Georgia a couple times, I think, or at least once.
Yeah, so they played in 3 championship games.
And, well, I mean, yeah, but the program was a much more successful program when they were in the Southwest Conference. They were in bigger games.
It's if we took it upon ourselves to try to elevate everybody to championship status, that's not feasible. That can't happen.
Well, that's obvious. You can't. Yeah, every week in college football, somebody's going to lose. Half the team lose.
There you go. So why are we protecting Arkansas? They've shown that they can compete in the SEC.
I'm not protecting Arkansas. I'm saying Arkansas should have some self-preservation and want to protect themselves. They should want to be as competitive as they can be and compete in an environment where they can get to the higher echelons. If they were in an old Southwest Conference, what were the chances of them getting a chance to possibly, only think about if they were in the Southwest Conference. Remember the old Southwest Conference?
Sure.
It was nothing but schools from Texas.
Yep.
And it was Arkansas, correct?
Correct.
So you had Texas, you had Arkansas, you had FMU, you had TCU. I think Rice was in there.
Baylor.
Houston was in there.
Baylor. Yes.
Yeah, and remember back in the days where you saw some of those Southwest Conference teams would be competitive. Houston, who's done okay at the kind of mid-major level, they beat Florida State in the Peach Bowl a few years ago, and they've had some sprints of success with Art Briles. And I think Major Applewhite had a good year or two. Then I think the coach that was at Texas now, I can't remember his name because he's going to get fired. He ain't that good now at Texas, but he did well at Houston.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Houston is kind of like a Memphis job.
Yeah.
Kind of like a UCF job. I don't really thinking about Memphis. Florida State thinks they went and hired a good coach, but I don't know if they've just not hired another average kind of a Justin Fuente coach, because I think Memphis in that conference is like what certain schools in the SEC are. I think Memphis and your Houstons and these mid to major lower levels, I think those are really prime jobs in those conferences. So it's easier to succeed in some of those places. But my point was, Houston, you remember when they played Joe Montana in the Cotton Bowl?
Yep, 35-34. Yep.
Yeah, and back in those days, it just seemed like there was more of a playing field where college football was more interesting. I'd like to see college football, just more teams kind of have an opportunity going into the season, even if it was just 15 or 16 teams that I knew would have a chance to win the national championship. Right now, we're talking about every year, some years just maybe 3 or 4 teams, and if we're lucky, some years maybe 5 or 6 teams that really have a legitimate shot to win the national championship. And I think that's taken away the Big 12, Big 12, but this college football expansion has not been good for the sport, in my humble opinion.
Well, you've got some interesting comments, and I understand. I loved it at that point, too, and there was such a connection between the conferences, the conference champion, and the bowl game. Like, the Cotton Bowl just reeked of Southwest Conference. Arkansas and all those Texas teams, they belonged the winner to go to the Cotton Bowl. As you mentioned.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
Yeah, and it was a big deal.
When you go to the Cotton Bowl, you bleed on the field to win the Cotton Bowl. Now, if you don't make the playoff, these kids don't even care if they go to one of the major bowl games. It's like, oh, so what? I'm just going to go pick my swag up, or I'll sit out for the draft.
Yeah, I don't know that we're ever going to get back to those days, regardless of how we configure the conferences. And the thing I'll say about Missouri, is that I had the same thought when Missouri was moved to the SEC. I thought, oh, this is going to be ugly. This is not good for this school, for this football program. They're out of their element. Where are they going to recruit and try to keep up with what's going on there? And then they win the 2 divisions, and I don't think that that's a huge statement. It's a credit to them, but the SEC East was down.
Correct.
But was Missouri going to conference championship games in the Big 12? No. They never went to one. So I don't know.
They played in a couple. They lost. I think it was to Oklahoma. It was back in that crazy football season. I think it was 2007, where LSU became the first ever 2-loss national champion. That Missouri, if they'd have won the Big 12 championship game, because West Virginia had lost.
I don't remember Missouri ever playing in a Big 12 championship game. They
have played. They have played one.
No, they haven't. I'm looking at the history of the Big 12 championship game. Yeah, you are right. They did play in 2 Big 12 championship games.
I know my stuff, brother.
What's that?
I know my stuff. I need to come help you work with your show, man.
There you go. Yeah. I shouldn't say it right now because it's ill-placed, but yeah, I can certainly recite championship games and bowl games with anybody around. But anyway,
yeah. So in West Virginia is another program that I think West Virginia has more wins than any football program that hasn't actually won a national championship. They got great history, great tradition, great fans, and because of all this, overexpansion, they've been lost in the shuffle, and they have no business being in the Big 12. No business at all.
Exactly. Yeah, those 2 Missouri Big 12 championship game appearances are not coming to mind. I'm looking right at the score, and I vaguely remember them playing those 2 games. I vaguely remember it. I know I watched them, but okay.
And Kansas State has made 2 or 3 Big 12 championship games. See, in fact, Kansas State, if they don't lose in a big upset to Texas A&M in 1998,
sure,
Kansas State is playing Tennessee for the national championship.
Yep.
And another thing too, I'll tell you, I think it was 2009. If I'm not, I might be wrong about this, but I think it was the year that Nebraska almost pulled off a huge upset. Yeah, I am right. If Nebraska would have beaten Texas,
sure,
and Cincinnati would have ended up playing Alabama in the national championship game. Instead, they play Florida in the Sugar Bowl and get shellacked.
Sure. But do we really think that Cincinnati would have been number 2 ranked?
Well, I think the way the rankings had fallen out, that you basically probably would have had to have put them up there.
Yeah, I'd have to look at that. But yeah, that was the year that Colt McCoy threw the ball out of bounds with maybe 1 second left, and they got the field goal unit on the field and won the game 13-12 over Nebraska.
Yeah, you're sharp. You got a mind like a computer, brother. That's right.
Yeah, that's why I'm beating myself up for forgetting that Missouri played in back-to-back Big 12 championship games. And now I'm looking at the scores here, and yeah, I certainly remember these games, but yeah, they got shellacked twice.
You remember the year that Kansas State just shellacked
Oklahoma.
And then there was the year.
Yep.
Yeah, and there was the year also that Nebraska got stroked by Colorado in the Big 12 championship and played Miami, I think, in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, so you're outlining all my issues with the BCS. When people bring up the BCS and say, "Oh, we should go back to the BCS," I automatically go back to the year that you referenced just a few minutes ago, 1998. So you tell me what should happen when one team's undefeated, Tennessee, and then we've got 6 Power 5 teams that had one loss. Ohio State, Wisconsin, Arizona, UCLA, Kansas State, and Florida State all had one loss. You know, who goes and plays in that championship game? Well, obviously Florida State did, but how is that fair? And then, like you mentioned, Nebraska doesn't even win its division. They lose by 62-36 to Colorado on Thanksgiving weekend, and they still go and play in the national championship game, and they get mauled. Oklahoma only scores 7 points with an offense that was supposed to be the best in the country. They only score 7 against Kansas State. They lose 35-7. The computer still puts them in the national championship game against LSU. They lose, and on and on and on.
Yeah, well, the computers, they really suck, and they sucked from the beginning when Miami got robbed in 2000, and they put Florida State in the game against Oklahoma. Miami should have played Oklahoma in 2000. The computers always suck. I mean, they kind of tweaked them over the years, and what they did was get rid of, the computers were only as good as the information that was being put into it. And some of those polls and some of those things that were being put to Dunkel Index and some of these stupid, nobody even knew where these things were coming from. Some of the formula for the computer was really stupid. And over the years, they seem to be getting better tweaking that, where I thought near the end of it, I thought they were pretty good the last few years about getting the number 1 and the number 2 team in. And I remember in, I guess it was 2006, Florida, Michigan was saying that they should have been playing you guys in a rematch in 2006. But I was like, Michigan didn't have one argument over Florida. You weren't conference champion. Florida was. Y'all both had one loss. The schedules were pretty even. There's something else I'm thinking of too, but I can't remind.
Well, looking at it in hindsight, it's totally ridiculous. But at the time, obviously, we didn't know that Florida was going to kill Ohio State, and it was going to look the way it did. But at the time, there was an argument, but I don't believe in the way that it's set up now and the way it was set up then. I don't believe in the rematch. Now, if this was the NFL and somebody earned their way into a rematch, that's another deal. But when you just got to select teams, well, Michigan had its shot. They lost. But I understand the argument that Michigan was number 2. You lose by 3 points on the road against the consensus number 1 team in the country. In a lot of situations, that number 2 team's holding its spot.
Yeah, and speaking of rematches, how about Alabama just getting lucky to get a chance to play LSU in 2011?
Well, I got to say,
remember that? Iowa State, I think
sure.
it was upsetting Oklahoma. Oklahoma State would have played for a national championship had they just won that easy Big 12 game that they were supposed to win at the end of the year.
Well, what was unfortunate about that situation, if you recall, that was the day they played Iowa State on a Thursday night, and that was just hours, like 10 or 12 hours after, like the night before, one of the Oklahoma State women's teams, there was a tragic plane accident, and like,
yeah, the Right. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And who knows? I'm not making an excuse for a team losing a game, but there's obviously ties and relationships, and who knows what's going on in terms of personally a football team having to play after some of their other another athletic team at the same school just had a tragic plane accident just less than 24 hours before the game. The thing about that is all sorts of people were asking me at the time who should be playing in the national championship, and my answer was LSU and Oklahoma State. And they would say, you think they're the two best teams in the country? And I said, no, I don't think they're the two best teams in the country. I think the two best teams in the country are Alabama and LSU. But Alabama already got its shot. So I think Oklahoma State, as a conference champion with one loss, should be in the game.
And if you remember, Alabama got beat on their home field in that what was it, 9-6 game or some
overtime.
Close. Yeah. So they had no right to be bitching. I mean, Oklahoma State gave them a gift. At that point, they had to put Alabama in the championship game, and they got their chance, and they took advantage of it. So, all credit to you for doing that. But if Oklahoma State would have won, they definitely deserve to be in the chance. Sometimes it's not always about, to me, it's not always about the best. The best can be subjective. Most of the time we think we know who the best is, but we don't always know that for sure. And so to me, having a good season, and who is the best, that is subjective. We know
Absolutely.
that the SEC most of the time is the best conference. I'm glad that you brought up a point, because I was talking to a buddy of mine who's another big college football fan. And in 2016, the ACC was the best conference in football. And, I mean, it was, hands down. But I think our last 10, 11, 12 years, the SEC's been probably the best conference in football every single year, except for probably that one.
Yep, I would agree.
And I'm not saying that because I'm an SEC homer. I'm a Florida fan. I could give a flip about the SEC. I hate all our rivals in the SEC. I hope they all get curb stomped, no matter, when they're playing each other, if they play out of conference. I don't get into this conference crap. I care about my school, and that's it. And I think Clemson has a great advantage of playing the ACC. People talk about, why don't Clemson join? Why in the hell would you want to join the SEC? That's stupid. Why would you want to do that? If you can be up top of the ACC almost every year, you're going to get huge dollars. You're going to be competing for national championships. The program gets more exposure. It makes more money. That's what I'm trying to say. Maybe Arkansas or some of these other schools, it would be better for them to get in a lesser conference, get more exposure, get more. That brings them more. There's more ways to get money than just being in the league that's making the most money. But these people that make these decisions, they're not football people. They don't. All they see is the very nearsighted to see the dollars. That's all they see. But they don't think, well, the dollars could be here in these other ways, and we can have a team that's more competitive, and we could have a team that could maybe win some more championships. But they just run to go to the conference where they think, oh, this is the most prestigious conference, so we'll just be in this conference. Yeah, but you're not going to be any good being in that prestigious conference. I mean, when college football destroys all of its rivalries, that's when the sport will resemble professional football, and it's probably going to be the day where I quit watching. And, I hear them talking about paying players, and we seem to be getting closer to that. And I love that. I don't care if you want to call it idea, whatever you want to call it. I love amateurism, the idea of it. Yeah, I know cheating goes on. I'm not stupid. Okay, I know rules are bent. But I enjoy college football because of all the other stuff that makes it not professional. And when they go to this big, stupid playoff, we're going to be stuck with a bunch of stupid, non-competitive games. It's going to be bad. I think ultimately they're going to want to move this thing. And it's all because of money. Money has ruined not only football, money and television. Unfortunately, you know, when it started out, you just had a few big games on every week. I started watching college football back in the very late 70s, I guess when I was 8 or 9. And, you know, you only had a few schools that really got on TV. And then it got to be where everybody was getting more exposure. But it's kept progressing, and it's kept progressing to the point where television has ruined college sports. It's not the same. It's not. I really do want to go back to a day where maybe you could say there's 16 teams that if they have something break right for them, you know, they could actually be a national championship contender.
Well, I want to go back to that day. Sure, if we just pick ourselves up and throw ourselves into 1985, that's where we are. Florida State's good, Miami's good, Ohio State and Michigan are good. Notre Dame, well, they were starting to be good. They weren't good exactly in 1985, Jerry Faust last year. But anyway, you get the point. USC was good. Of course, in the SEC, LSU and Tennessee were good, et cetera, et cetera. Alabama was decent. Oklahoma, Texas, Nebraska. There were more teams involved.
Year before.
BYU won the year before. Yeah, we could go on and on. Anyway, you're right. It's what doesn't make sense to me is that you would think with the expansion of television and everybody being on TV that kids would be able to go to different schools knowing that they could be on national television regardless. But if anything's happened, it's been closed off to 3 to 5 schools to win a national championship.
Yeah. And we thought that it would work the other way, but it's not done that.
No, it's not. But
I like your idea of talking about realignment, and I think that some of these athletic directors, somebody should have something presented in front of them to say, you know what, it really might be in our best interest to thinking about for college football to create another conference or for us to jet over here to this league. I mean, really, the television, you think about it, the television money and the contracts for the television is the reason why the SEC chose Missouri and Texas A&M to come into the SEC because they wanted to get the St. Louis market of television.
Sure.
And they wanted to dip into Texas with the TV markets. So that's another example of how TV and not wanting the most competitive kind of football, how it's, you know, it's ruined the sport. The sport's not, I mean, don't get me wrong, I still love college football, and I don't know how many more years I'm really going to be able to enjoy it like I always have, but I mean, it's not as enjoyable as it used to be. And I don't know if that's just because I'm getting old, but people who are younger now, they can't remember back when me and you were growing up and what it was like. It was more interesting. There was more dynamics at play. Now everybody's like every year, it's just going to be Alabama, Ohio State, you know, Oklahoma.
Well,
and
yeah, I see it on here every offseason leading into the season.
4 years from now, it'll be Florida State. 4 years from now, it'll be Florida State. In there with Clemson,
sure,
as an example, I'm just saying, or Miami. You know, put Miami in there. In 4 years, it'll be Florida that's in there that's dominating again, instead of Alabama or LSU. You know, it's going to be SEC probably be a little bit more competitive, but you know, instead of Oklahoma, maybe the Texas goes on a run in that conference. So
yeah, but for about 5 years now, since 2015, we've basically, as you say, we've had the same formula, and that's why I get on here every off season. And at some point, I make the comment: I love college football in terms of what's going on the field, the product on the field. I love it. Love the tradition, the prestige, and I love the football being played on the field. But is this boring? Is this boring because we know Clemson's going to win the ACC? We're almost sure Ohio State's going to win the Big Ten. We're almost sure Oklahoma's going to win the Big 12. And then the SEC was owned by Alabama. And now we got some, we had Georgia make some rumblings and obviously win the league, and now LSU. But generally, we've locked it down to that formula, and that's it. That's what it is.
And guess what? It's not as good, and it's not as exciting as it used to be. There was more. I mean, I remember, go back to 1983 season, 84 Orange Bowl, when Miami beat Nebraska. Nebraska was supposed to be the best team that ever played college football. And Miami pulls that huge upset and really kind of starts the whole Florida, Florida State, Miami, the whole, thing for college football with that state. The Cotton Bowl was going on that day. And Texas was ranked number 2. If Texas takes care of business against Georgia that day in the Cotton Bowl, Miami beat Nebraska, would be irrelevant for Miami to win the national championship because Texas would have won it. But you know what? That was interesting as hell, that all that stuff used to happen on the same day.
Well,
I remember.
Sure.
I remember watching TV when I was a kid growing up, and we'd get like 3 or 4 TVs from around the house and set them all down in the living room, and we'd be watching 3 or 4 different games, at one time because of the kind of scenarios that I just, talked about.
Well, yeah. So somebody asked me to cut a video on the 1983 season, and I'm going to do that. So I'm going to look at the 1983 season. I remember all the games, as you just mentioned. In the afternoon, you had the Cotton Bowl, and Georgia upset Texas 10-9, and you had the Auburn playing probably the most difficult schedule in college football that year, and then they played Michigan in the Sugar Bowl, and then, of course, Miami was ranked 5th in the country entering the night, but, of course, they leapfrogged everybody because they beat the number 1 team. People forget that Illinois actually was in the Rose Bowl at 10-1, but they got annihilated by UCLA, so that took them out of it. Jack Trudeau. Tony Eason, or was that Jack Trudeau in 83? No, that would have been Tony Eason because then he was Trudeau, then Eason, because he went 0 for 6 in his first 6 pass attempts at the Super Bowl against the Bears before he got knocked out of that game. So somebody wanted me to look at that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, this is the way it played out, and this is what the voters were thinking. But really, when it all was said and done, Auburn had a great claim for a national championship, just as much as Miami, and they played a much more difficult schedule. They just didn't win the game that looked the best on New Year's Day.
They didn't look good that day against Michigan. The thing that helped Miami was highly ranked, Texas losing. Plus, really, to be honest with you, that Nebraska team that year, a lot of people thought that was the best, at the time, thought that was the best college football team to ever play.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the scores of their games were ridiculous.
They beat somebody. I think it was Minnesota, 81-7. They tore somebody.
They had several scores like that. A lot of 63-13 type scores against the Iowa State and Kansas.
They destroyed Penn State, who was a national champion from the previous
year. Kickoff classic.
Yes, I used to love those kickoff classic
I love them too. Because you know what happened the next year was because of the Miami-Auburn controversy, they matched those 2 up in the kickoff classic the next year. That was great. Yeah.
Yeah, Jimmy Johnson's first game.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
then he had a wild game with Florida in Tampa after that.
And of course, it was the same year that they lost to Doug Flutie on Thanksgiving, or the Friday after Thanksgiving, on the Hail Mary.
And there was another game, I think, that they lost that year that was crazy, just as crazy. They lost to Maryland that year, being ahead 30-0
at quarterback. Yeah, they were up they lost 42-40. They were up 40-14, something like that.
31-0. Yeah.
Yeah, 31-0. Yep. And Frank Reich brought them back. Ironically, the guy who led the biggest point comeback in the history of college football, major college football, then let's see, it would have been about 7 or 8 years later in 1993. well, longer than that, about 10 years later, 1993, led the biggest comeback in the history of the NFL playoffs when the Bills were down 35-3 to the Houston Oilers. Came back and won.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's really good. I'm probably taking too much of your time up, but it's really good talking to somebody who knows college football.
Well, I appreciate it, and again, I'm probably going to lose some sleep tonight by forgetting that Missouri played in those Big 12 championship games. Man.
You can't remember them all, brother.
I try to remember everything.
You missed the Tony Eason one, too. You thought Jack Trudeau.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look at those years. But they went through Illinois had a good string of quarterbacks. They had Dave Wilson, who went to the Saints, and he actually set the all-time passing yardage record for a game, 621 in 1980. Then, Tony Eason, Jack Trudeau. Or it was Trudeau and then Eason. Yep. Tony Eason.
You know something?
With Mike White as the head coach.
Something that I used to really love about college football back in those days when, you're all these different tie-ins with those bowl games. The SEC champion always to the Sugar Bowl, and it's still that way. But the Southwest Conference champion, to the Cotton Bowl, the Big 12 champion in the Orange Bowl. What I really miss about those days, I remember when I was a kid, I was in middle school. I used to write down all the teams from the leagues and say, I hope in my lifetime I'll see this team, this team, and this team, all the teams from the league play in their, the bowl game tie-in that they had. And I remember 95 being a special year because, I'm a Florida fan. I remember we got killed by Nebraska that year. But beside that, what was so cool was that Northwestern made the Rose Bowl. And how huge of a deal that was when Northwest. I always thought, wouldn't it be cool to see Vanderbilt go to a Sugar Bowl, or something like that? Or I never saw Oregon State get to a Rose Bowl, but I saw Oregon. Oregon became a power. I've never seen Arizona get to the Rose Bowl. I've seen Arizona State get there. And then those kind of days, those were fun because those bowl games were, it was like having 4 or 5 Super Bowls on January 1st. January 1st used to be my favorite day of the year. It was awesome.
Yeah.
But now my favorite time is the weekend after Thanksgiving because of all the great college football rivalries that are played.
That Northwestern team, just as a tidbit, the 1995 Northwestern team, they had a very odd season in that they needed Ohio State to lose to Michigan to go to the Rose Bowl, which happened. Ohio State was number 1, consensus number 1, undefeated, lost to Michigan to get knocked out of the Rose Bowl, and Northwestern won the Big Ten championship. But Northwestern lost, I'd have to look it up, a very odd non-conference game to like a MAC school. And that was their one loss on the season. Then they got trucked by USC and Keyshawn Johnson in the Rose Bowl. And who else did you mention going to a bowl game that would have been strange? But so I had a conversation with Brian Musso, who was a running back for Northwestern, like a versatile kind of poor man's Christian McCaffrey kind of player. Really good player for Northwestern on that team. He was the son of, and I'm going to screw up their first names, the famous Musso running back that played at Alabama back in the 70s, like the early 70s. And I interviewed him when I was working all the SEC games, and he told me, he was dead honest about this. He said, and so the reason Northwestern went to the Rose Bowl is they didn't play Ohio State. They were the one game that they didn't play in the regular season in the Big Ten. And he was honest with me. We were just talking about it and what happened that season. And he goes, we would see Ohio State on tape throughout the season, preparing for our other opponents. He goes, we did not want to see them. We did not want to play Ohio State. And they probably would have gotten trucked because they were a much more talented team. But it was just fun to see Northwestern be able to squeeze through a Big Ten schedule and make a Rose Bowl. It was tremendous.
Yeah, it was awesome because you had a bunch of just gritty kids that year that, seasons like that are really special. And even remember it was the early 90s. I think it was 89 or
when Colorado kind of came out of nowhere,
Sure.
and you had the Salinesi, who died,
Yep.
and he was messing around with the coach's daughter, got her pregnant,
Yep.
but became a real big, huge part of that family and a big story back then at the time. Yeah, college football just seemed like there was more powers and more programs in play, more good stories. We thought that this other way was going to make college football better, and if you really can remember back in the day, it's really not better. You can argue it, I guess, but I lived through it. I've seen what it was like back then and what it is today.
Well,
and
sir,
to me,
I'm right there with you. I was just going to say, sir, before I let you go, I want to clear my good name. I just looked up the quarterback for Illinois in the 1984 Rose Bowl. So the 83 season, 84 Rose Bowl against UCLA. Jack Trudeau.
Okay.
Tony Eason's last year was 82. So Trudeau.
Maybe I think of another bowl game that I remember when I was little that I saw him in.
Well, you know what bowl game Tony Eason played in? That's interesting now that you bring that up. That would have been, guess what head coach's last game? Tony Eason would have been the opposing quarterback in that game in 1982.
Remind me.
Bear Bryant, Alabama. They played Illinois in the Liberty Bowl.
Right.
So Tony Eason would have been the quarterback of that game.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, I remember that. I remember Florida playing.
Yep.
No, I was just gonna say I remember some of those old
bowl games.
The Blue Bonnet Bowl.
Oh yeah, Arkansas played. Florida and Arkansas played in '82 in the Blue Bonnet Bowl. Was it?
Yeah, it was. And I remember just getting excited to see any bowl game back then. Was like it was a party for a football frenzy person for people who love football. It didn't matter, if it was Raycom that was showing the game.
You were reading my mind. I was exactly going to say the same thing. If it wasn't a major bowl game or a weekend game, you'd have those Raycom, like Liberty Bowl, the Blue Bonnet Bowl, the Tangerine Bowl, the Freedom Bowl. Those would be the Raycom games. Yeah, those were beautiful.
And the Gator Bowl used to be a much bigger bowl game.
Yeah.
It's kind of got degraded. But the Gator Bowl used to be a really big bowl game.
Yep, absolutely. Good stuff.
But, yeah,
all
good
right,
talking to you, man.
Yeah, good to
talk to you. I need to come work for you, man.
I can use the help, especially from somebody who knows what they're talking about. That's good stuff.
Yeah, I saw your vision episode, so, yeah, it was good. Hey, take care, man.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
You too.
All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We've hit 9 o'clock Eastern time. We started this live stream at 7 o'clock, and 2880, 28. Man, that's a difficult handle for me to spit out every time. Anyway, 288028. Yes, I messed up on the Mizzou. He's got it right there at 0708. I don't know how that one I blew a fuse or something upstairs. All right. I don't know. I believe that we've done all that we can. I know that people don't like long phone calls, but we were going down memory lane of all these various bowl games. And I know people were like, get off the phone, but we're talking college football. And I addressed all the comments and questions to the conference realignment that were either sent to me earlier in the week or were on the live chat. Dave Greenshield, Mark, how about 94 Penn State? They deserve to share of the Natty. Absolutely right. And if I had the motivation, meaning enough views to do it, I tell you guys this all the time because I started this last year or the year before. I would want to go through every season and line up exactly what happened versus what could have happened or could have been determined, because there are teams every year in college football that get ripped off. Penn State would be one. Undefeated Joe Paterno team, and he had others that did not win national championships. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Nate.
Hey, Nate. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good. What's going on?
So, you're talking about the realignment for any conference?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if Nebraska can go to their old conference back. I mean, it would be nice, actually, but to me, I think they should stay for like 2 years. If they can be at their level, maybe go back to Big 12.
Well, unfortunately, they don't get to decide that. They only have
I know.
part of the decision-making process in their hands.
Jesus. Sorry, that's my brother.
Well, a little disturbance there at the household. Anything else, Nate?
No, that's all. I just want to stop by and say hi.
Well, we appreciate it. Always love seeing your name in the live chat.
Thank you, and have a good day.
Thanks, Nate. Yep. All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, taking your calls and addressing the comments on our conference realignment. If you don't know what we're talking about or haven't checked out all the videos, I outlined the conference realignment at the beginning of this live stream and cut a video on the 6 conferences that I've outlined. There's also a scheduling component to it as well that I will get to later. I certainly don't have the voice or the the energy in me and have to work until, get this, I'll be home at 7 o'clock in the morning. I need to work all night until 6 in the morning. By the time I get home and settled, it will be 7 a.m. So we're going to call it quits. No, I'm not going to sleep after this. I'm just going to relax. We'll do that. But there is a scheduling component to this as well that I would like to address at some point, because we've worked out a much fair and more equitable way to schedule in conference and out of conference. Keep in mind that if there's anybody out there watching right now that has not subscribed, please do. It helps out the channel immensely. And also, we always have the super chat on available to you to help support Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Also, as you can see down in the description section below, you can go directly to Venmo or PayPal and contribute there directly. I'll be back on Sunday night at 10 o'clock Eastern Time. Sunday at 10 Eastern Time. And also, we're looking to do a Miami live here in the next day. We've had some scheduling issues that have not allowed us to schedule that and lock it in for sure, but we'll talk Miami football here very soon, as well as everybody else. Thanks for joining, and have a great, great night, great weekend, and we will see you soon.